I don't have anything to say about this competition at the moment, but it's just more about how things will go down at the HLTV Awards. If it comes down to a 1 versus 2 between ZywOo and Donk, like ZywOo knew he was kind of out of the running at the most recent award show, but I want to see what sort of swagger ZywOo walks across that stage with if he takes back the #1 spot.
Yeah.
You know, because we the year previously I thought had a great showing with ZywOo. He's got that photo of him like striking a pose with his trophy. Like both him and Donk are the 2 players I think that have held themselves and presented themselves the best as like the Counter-Strike champion in each of the years that they've been celebrated as the best player.
She said she loves you.
But she can't love me.
But I love you.
I won't play window anymore.
What's going on?
Play your role. 1xbet.
Welcome everybody to the HLTV Awards by 1xbet Off-Season Check-in. Tonight we're going to be talking about all the hype, all the excitement, all the news surrounding the event, and reveal the frontrunners for our main awards. HLTV Awards are of course made possible by our wonderful partners 1xbet and Skin Club. My name is Freya Spears, joined by a star-studded panel here tonight. We've of course got Scrawny, very familiar with being up on the stage with him this year. Great to have you back. How's your off-season been so far, Scrawny?
Oh, thank you, Freya. Off-season's been fantastic, nice and easy, been relaxed. I'm excited today to talk a little bit of Counter-Strike because life without Counter-Strike is barely worth living.
It's been a quiet off-season, let's say that. We've obviously also got Prof and Striker here to discuss all the intricacies of what is going to be coming up for the HLTV Awards 2025. Anything you guys have been up to so far in these couple of weeks?
Not too much, honestly. What hasn't been much of an off season. My off season is next week. But other than that, keeping track of what Striker is doing and telling him he's doing a great job every day. I think that's been my last 2 weeks.
That's not how I remember it. For me, I kept things all Counter-Strike. Even for the 4 days I had off, I went to my first BIOC in like 7 years. So that was I've kept it pretty focused.
How'd that go?
I don't want to talk about it.
Well, let's smoothly segue on then. I'm sure everybody has seen the announcement of the upcoming HLTV Awards, but just in case anybody has missed out on that, let's recap exactly what's cooking for 2025.
The HLTV Awards, celebrating the best every single year. And now the biggest Counter-Strike award show just got bigger. Same city, new venue, over 1,000 guests. Meet, mingle, and network. HLTV Awards by 1xbet.
Yes, we'll of course be returning to Belgrade, Serbia. This time, Connor, 1,000 people in the audience. Oh, it's only getting bigger.
1,000's probably too many, Freya. If it's us up there again, I don't know if we can handle that. 1,000's pushing the limits. I didn't know there was 1,000 people that would want to come to HLTV Awards, but I feel like after last year, maybe we're on the up and up, you know?
Hell yeah. There was also a nice little announcement at the tail end, Prof, for the conference that's going to be proceeding on the 9th. Can you give us any more insight on that?
Well, I mean, it's something people have actually reached out to us and being like, okay, we have all of these cool people here. Let's have some talks, do something, putting people together, making the scene a better place. And this is kind of the idea that we're going for. We have industry leaders really here. It's not necessarily something we're doing for any other cause than putting Counter-Strike in a better place and improving it moving forward. And that's the idea. Obviously, it depends on who's going to say yes. The goal would be to put some people together that maybe we don't see often at the table, discussing directly. And that would be one of the goals that we have. And other than that, just like expanding what we're doing over this weekend in Belgrade for people that are coming there to have more stuff than just having good drinks and having fun, to also make it a part of a improving networking experience, let's say like that.
Speaking of fun, should we recap some of our favorite moments from last year's award show? Scrawny, let's start with you. What was your personal favorite moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a collection of moments by the end of the weekend. But if there was the cherry on top for me was a chance to introduce Gooseman to the Counter-Strike community. Min Lee has shown a passion for competitive Counter-Strike, I think, in the last year or so on Twitter. He's been getting much more involved in the community. And I think a lot of this stemmed from his debut at the HLTV Awards. I thought Prof selecting him as a presenter of an award was an excellent decision. And it was just cool because, of all the people we would bring out on stage, Freya, you kind of, you're going for this like nice nightlife elegance throughout the award show. But for Gooseman, I really wanted to try to like push it to the closest thing as to like a player walkout, so from a host point of view, it's like if there was one moment where I was just going to try to go like play by play crowd hype, mentality, it was for Gooseman. And look what the reaction happened, right? With the players actually giving him a standing ovation that went on for like multiple minutes. The entire room was on its feet for him. And I thought that for me was the highlight, because we've seen him now attend events since, and he's getting more and more involved. But I think that this was really the first platform for us to appreciate him, almost in a way welcoming him for his now more frequent appearances.
He loves you and Launders for some reason. See every tweet you guys make, he's in there. He's in the replies. He's hyping you guys up.
He's kind of like we see him as kind of like our uncle, uncle who is rediscovering Counter-Strike since creating it.
The lost uncle that you didn't know, you thought he died 30 years ago. It's like, nah, I've just been, wandering the world, and I've been in Southeast Asia the whole time. It's like, okay.
Which is crazy too, because honestly, really nice guy. And it's wild. It's one of those people who it's like, why am I interacting with the creator of Counter-Strike? To me, I still keep him up on that pedestal, but we are all Canadian. And I remember after the award show, actually catching him in the elevator afterwards and just kind of like trying to push him to be like, listen, come to more events. People love you. People want to celebrate you. You've earned this spot, even if you feel like you are an outsider. And now I think he's kind of thriving in it.
Obviously, we had a lot of fun with some of the intros, but this was the one I saw you grinding the hardest on when you were pre-writing the entrance of Gooseman. And I think it really hit. I think it was a really beautiful moment.
Thank you, Freya.
Let's talk about Striker's favorite moment of last year. What would that be for you?
Yeah, for me, it's also kind of a collection, but generally it is donk. Pretty much anytime donk went up on that stage, for some reason, when donk entered those awards, he had the new haircut, and we were like, okay, this is like the little slick suit and all that stuff was like completely different aura. And like every time he went up on that stage, but of course that one particular moment, I think it was for the highlight, which was just before the player of the year, right? And then what he says is like, it's not going to be the last time I'm here, so it was just like such a cool, he's a cool guy for his age, and it was just a really cool moment.
Yeah, I think we didn't see this side of donk until this moment, right? Yes. In tournaments, he's always like, yeah, I played my own game, whatever, the classic lines, nothing too special, never getting like really too excited about like any achievements or anything. Obviously, winning the major, you saw a bit of that, but never really heard from him. And obviously, this was a moment for him when obviously there was some preparation going on from his side and the team. And I mean, obviously they all came in like matching turtlenecks and looked super slick. You see all these photos, but the just the charisma that he brought to the stage, I did not expect that at all. Like there is nothing preceding this that would make us ready for what he delivered on that stage. And just like, I think just amazing. Like as a competitive, but also entertainment industry, like, yeah, we can have players that are great, but don't have much behind it. And Donk is not one of them. Like he is built different, and that's been that was an amazing moment, definitely.
That last photo as well, was just so much aura in that.
Yeah,
that was
With the walk-off.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the I think it was after the highlight as well. He was saying, like, or during the speech, it was heroic, made mistakes, and then just proceeds to thank Magix as well during that. It was just like, okay, you have so many moments to do this. It's that one. That is such a sick
that's
shot.
the one.
That is the one. Prof, what would your favorite moment be?
Well, this one's kind of a hindsight moment. As it was happening, it was quite stressful. But friberg going missing at the start of the big ceremony. Obviously, we start with the red carpet and all these things. Me and Striker and Chad talking, getting some guests and stuff like that. Obviously, we saw them. Yeah, they came in, having some drinks, talking, getting his old top 20 medals and stuff like that. But the start of the show, you want it to start smoothly, but it didn't start smooth at all. There were some delays, getting the watches in place for the Hall of Fame. That was a whole thing, not to get into that. But okay, we get Potty on the stage. He's doing his Hall of Fame thing. And after that, it's friberg announcing for Donk Opener of the Year. And you guys call out friberg. Friberg's not coming out. And time is passing. And I don't think, if you go on the VOD, it's cut out. So it doesn't look like long. It was like a minute or two. But that everyone was just waiting, like, what is happening? What is actually happening? And then the crowd started chanting his name. Everyone was getting hyped up. Like it kind of went well, but realistically, it was a complete disaster, and everything was very messed up in behind. Like he was supposed to be there, walk out on stage, just smooth as everything. But no, he was, from what I heard, he was just chilling in the crowd. Forgot that he was the first guy in the row. That he needed to be backstage for the announcement. So he was like halfway through Potty's speech, he's like, "Oh yeah, who's next? Oh, it's me." And then he started getting towards the stage. But that's a bit of a walk,
I'm glad you have fond memories of that, because in the moment, me and Connor, I was just looking at you like, brother, you're going to have to take the wheel. You're going to have to just be like, and sorry, friberg couldn't be here right now.
Really appreciate that, by the way, Freya. First time hosting up there with you, supposed to be my crutch to lean on. And if you weren't going to break, I wasn't going to break. So we just stood there smiling, waiting it out. But I think actually, Prof, you said like just earlier kind of with the striker point about like how like Donk kind of controlled the swagger of the night. I do think it's really cool that Counter-Strike's in a place where the crowd just naturally started chanting friberg. Like there's almost that mentality, I think, in CS now as these award shows go on, that like we are embracing the entertainment side of it. Like we know how to get through an awkward pause without going into instruction. We didn't try to start a chant. It just occurred. And I think like that goes to show the comfort in the room. I think the room saved friberg from being extra awkward.
And everyone same.
Yeah.
But that's why it's also my favorite moment is like when that happens and everything's fine. You're like, okay, whatever's going to happen from now on, we'll handle it somehow. But yeah, just sitting in that crowd and watching everything with zero power, it's quite a feeling. I can just say that.
Unique experience. I think my favorite moment has to be the Apex interview that he did with Donna down on the show floor, because obviously we came off of last year's award show where Vitality, Apex himself, obviously getting Game Leader of the Year. Vitality sweeping up pretty much everything else they could get their hands on. And then Apex, he's a very honest man, right? I think he was very aware that 2024 hadn't been Vitality's year at all. Obviously, Cologne is a kind of I don't want to say an anomaly. That was kind of the only high point of Vitality throughout that entire year. And just being very aware of, you're coming to this award show and you are not going to be lifting any of the trophies. You're not going to be taking any of the awards. And the fact that he was so candid and so honest with Donna in that moment about like, this is what we need to kickstart what is going to be our year, essentially. And in the moment, I don't know, I think I looked at you, Connor, I was just like, yeah, like it's nice words, but now you've got to back them up, right? How likely was that to actually happen? And then obviously now they have been the team of 2025, lifting every single accolade that they can get their hands on, right? So that was kind of an amazing, it's an amazing moment, particularly now that we look back and go, okay, he was actually totally right. That was the fuel to the fire. That's exactly what Vitality needed to, and obviously, adding ROPS, that helps in the mix.
Sure.
But yeah, that kind of moment for Apex was, it was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of cool stuff in different ways. I think that's not to toot my own horn too much, but it's nice to have a different environment for these things to happen, because obviously tournaments are the big thing, and that's what we all look to. That's why we're here. But having a different environment where it's not competitive, but it is still about Counter-Strike and competitive Counter-Strike, where people can express themselves, I think adds additional value and storylines and building all of these narratives that we enjoy as observers and pundits in different ways.
With 1,000 seats now available, Prof.
Yes.
If anybody wants to be getting their hands on one of those, how should they go about applying for an invite?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is the show is for industry members, so generally not for fans, but for anyone that works with a team that is competing, that is, anywhere on the top 200 of the HLTV, teams. Maybe you work with an org as a graphic designer, maybe you're a player manager, maybe you work with a TO. Like, all of these people are more than welcome to be a part of the show. And best way, if you don't have a direct contact, or if you don't know me from before, just go to HLTV.org/awards. There's a quick little form to fill in as much as you can, like as many details as you can. It's going to help us find who you are and, share an invite if it makes sense.
And I hear somebody very special has already confirmed their attendance, so maybe we should check in with who that is.
They talk about my one taps.
They talk about his one taps. They talk about him being at the HLTV Awards 2025. Obviously, he made a name for himself in so many ways inside Counter-Strike, inside the top 10, top 20 multiple times as well, and done a lot of interviews with you, Striker, apparently.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, I was looking at it. I was like, what did this happen even? It's like 10 years ago by now. It's kind of crazy.
I miss those interviews. I grew up on those interviews. Classic Striker and a player sitting down, and that insanely long microphone that was definitely not it's not made for what we used it for years, but hey, it worked. It was a good time. 2-time top 10 player of the year, actually, the headshot machine. He'll be joining us as our first announcer for the HLT Awards in Belgrade in January. Yeah,
lovely.
Crazy,
just as
actually.
a side note, could I ask, when you have the announcers, do they get to pick the category? Do you pick the category they're announcing? What happens there?
It's kind of, it's a give and take. I think overall, some players just make sense for specific categories. For example, last year I was talking to Kenny S, and he was like, the year before he did the Player of the Year, he did the biggest award, and he was like, this year, that's nice, but I just want to do the op one. I want to do the op. I know mezii is going to win. I want to give it to mezii, and he wanted this. And I was like, yeah, we can do that. So it's kind of let's see who makes sense for each category. We try to use players that played, a role to do that, or there should be some kind of a connection between the announcer and the player that is winning or the category, right? So this is for Scream now, which category you put him in. We don't have a headshot machines category, and I feel like what he even played is something the game played differently when he was active than to what it is now. I don't even know what role I would put. I don't know, Scrawny, what role would you put Scream in today?
I'd put him in a cultural impact machine.
Okay.
If I had to make a choice, which is honestly just like a term we weren't using in this space back then. But
yeah,
this is why I wanted to say it's a great inclusion and a cool announcement that Scream's going to be there, because there's no doubt that there are players who are going to attend this show that would have at some point looked up to Scream as an icon of Counter-Strike. And much like Gooseman never having been celebrated, it's like Scream has never been out on an HLTV award show stage, and I think the crowd are going to give him it's like when Pasha, anytime Pasha walks up, anytime these iconic players that deserve to be celebrated far beyond their time as players, even, right? You've given more to Counter-Strike than just your competition. I think at least I put Scream in that category, right? He's one of the early names that everybody kind of gets introduced to anytime someone's like a mechanical phenom. So yeah, that's where I'd put him, dude. It's somebody who needs to be celebrated, and now we have a chance to do it.
There's
Can we
something
make
about
that an award for next year? Can we add that?
Like cultural impact.
Yeah.
That could be a good community award, to be honest.
Sure. Yeah, actually.
We just pull 10 names out of our ass, proverbially, and put it out there and let people vote. I feel like that could be actually a pretty good award. Maybe even this year. No one's stopping us.
I mean, it's your show, dude.
I was going to say, like, there's something about that era of players, you know, like from that 2015 to 2016, like all those players that were big at the time, you know, like the Kiyoshimas, you know, that nowadays may be kind of forgotten around the new audience, right? Nobody really knows from people who started watching in COVID who Scream is or like, you know, all these things. But like, you know, people have been watching from the beginning, like they just have a special connection to all these players, you know, who were big in those, like specifically in those first few years, you know, so it's always cool to see those come back.
Okay, so Cultural Impact Award pending. That's TBD. Should we check in with the actual awards? I definitely.
I have just one thing I did email Kiyoshima. Fourth year maybe in a row. Maybe this time it works out. Every time he replies, but it never works out. So maybe we see him in January as well. Who knows?
Just have a whole reunion of that whole
French
squad. Let's go.
Squad,
circa 2015,
I don't know if they want
to
be reunited. You know, it was always very dramatic with those guys.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
Let's check in with the awards anyway. Let's see what we've got on the cards. Of course, it is the HLTV Awards Panel Awards and the Community Awards as Skin of the Year by Skin Club. Obviously, that was one of the newer awards coming in last year. But I think we should take a trip down memory lane as well and see the history of the HLTV Awards, because all the way back in 2021, that was the first award show. Obviously, it was kind of during the pandemic era, if you will. So no crowd in attendance, players are also tuning in remotely. Only 3 awards going down then as well. 2022, we moved on and added the panel and women's awards into the mix as well. First time we had a crowd in attendance too. That was in the beautiful city of Stockholm. 2023, we of course moved on to Belgrade, and that is where the first community awards were added into the mix. And 2024, the most recent HLTV Awards, was also where the Skin Club Award was added in as well for Skin of the Year, and of course the Hall of Fame, which we'll be chatting a little bit about later on as well. Gentlemen, if I could ask you to pick your favorite award from previous years, Connor, what would that be?
Yes. So last year, my favorite award was in-game leader of the year, and obviously won by Aleksib B. I think this is a little bit of hindsight applied to me selecting this award, just because as we go on throughout discussing like what's upcoming with this year and obviously Vitality's historic run in this most recent season of Counter-Strike, let's remember that Aleksib wins this award because he leads his team to 6 consecutive grand finals, right? And at the time, that felt like this accolade that is award earning, you know. That run with Na'Vi off the back of losing more rounds than any other team going into the playoffs, like Copenhagen was such an anomaly of an event that I think that, you know, in the post-game segment that he gets a lot of slack for when Jacob says like, we might not see them win anything else. This might just be one of these like one-off amazing miracle playoff runs. It would have been that if not for the in-game leadership of Aleksib, supported by, of course, Blade, right? The system was able to keep itself propped up off of the hype of that. And for a while, we were going to events with Na'Vi being the most popular team in attendance, right? Like winning a major does so much for you in that regard, because some people will start watching on the major. Some people therefore start cheering for Counter-Strike, and their favorite teams are established at those events. And it was really cool to see him take Na'Vi to that level. Again, right, he wins that award over top of Chopper, which it was this hotly debated, you know, Spirit versus Na'Vi was kind of the tale of 2024 in terms of the awards, because it was season to season. And I'm just glad that Aleksib got his flowers, because obviously with what's going on in Vitality's camp now in this run, it really makes Aleksib B's pale in comparison. But we celebrated it at the time because it was so difficult in a time where Counter-Strike consistency was so unobtainable. Na'Vi went on to do something special, and I'm glad he got his chance, because Apex is going to blow him out of the water.
I think the IGL of the year every year has been quite emotional, I feel like, for the people that won it. Like Kerrigan first, 2022, and then after that going into Apex 23 also. I think both of them went through so much. I think IGLs in general go through so much criticism, and because they are always the focal point of the team. And unless you're winning everything, you're shit, especially if you're on FaZe, as Kerrigan once said famously. So that's the pressure that you're under. And then when you get to this point and you win enough for your peers to vote you as the IGL of the year, and you go on that stage, it's kind of I feel like a breakthrough moment to be like, okay, finally people recognize all the work that I put in, and I can enjoy all the hard work essentially. So I think it's always a good choice.
Yeah, 100%. Striker, what would your favorite category be?
Yeah, there's maybe a bit of a theme developing with my favorite picks because I'm going to go with the player of the year. And I will say, like, maybe I'm going to look like a donk glazer here, but it's more about the race rather than the actual winner, you know, because as much as by the end, by the time that donk won that Shanghai Major MVP, you know, massive performance and all of that, by that time, I think everybody knew it was going to be donk pretty much, you know, most of the community, I think, expected it. But just before that, I think whoever won that MVP at the Shanghai Major, or whoever would have done the best out of those three at the Shanghai Major might have been the top one player, you know. So it was very cool to see the creation of this top three, you know, of this big three of the year kind of unfold throughout the year and then come down so close that the last tournament, and, you know, it's the major that actually decides the race, you know. So that was really cool, you know, watching it unfold. Yeah, not so much deciding it. Fortunately, you know, donk made it kind of easy. He reached out for it and he took it. You know, it would have been rough if not of them were the MVP. You know, maybe we would have had a pretty tough call.
Yeah, I think it was one of the most exciting races that we've seen for a top player, like in recent history, right? I might sound like I'm also going with a bit of not a cop-out answer with my favorite award category, but it kind of goes hand in hand with player of the year. I chose AWPer of the year. It's like obviously one of my favorite categories because you know, just watching AWPing and watching stylistically how a lot of these players have developed is really insane. But because it was kind of tied in with, at that point we knew that donk was most likely going to be taking the player of the year award. That kind of left, you know, mezii and ZywOo in the lurch for a first time in a very long time, you know, and AWPer not being the number one player to come out of the year. So this was a really nice moment for mezii to kind of get his flowers. Really great speech from him, Kenny S as well. So yeah, I think it was a really lovely moment to celebrate. Sure, we knew that he wasn't going to be getting, you know, the player of the year, but thoroughly deserved to be taking that award.
That's also one that's very curious sometimes, you know, when we had in the past, like, of course, ZywOo has this kind of identity as more of a hybrid, right? And so, like, how much do people take that into consideration of the people that vote, right? Like, do they think he is maybe a better player than mezii is, but like AWPer specifically it would be mezii. So it's a very interesting award that people can kind of take where they want as far as the, you know, the panel goes.
Do you remember, or are you aware with like how close it was in terms of that race?
I think it was fairly convincing towards mezii, but I would be I would just be guesstimating at this point.
Well, the second and third, you know, you picked player of the year, Striker, but the second and third decision still to this day very controversial on the HLTV forums. Yeah. Some would say ZywOo was robbed. Some would say mezii is Nero's son. But all of these things are probably not correct, especially if you look at, you know, the panel also voting for mezii over ZywOo in this year as the AWPer. But that's, again, the difference between the player and the AWPer and a lot of little details that come into these things. Ultimately, for me, my favorite moment would be the Hall of Fame induction of f0rest specifically. Obviously, the Hall of Fame was a new thing brought in. This is actually a concept that 1xBet brought to us that kind of pushed for it to be implemented, and then it was on us to put it together. And it's a tricky thing. I think Hall of Fames, just like award shows, most of the time they suck and they're not really true to what the community thinks. So it's always a hard task, and ultimately the 4 that ended up being inducted, I think, are without a doubt Hall of Famers. Would you pick them first or second? That's kind of the only question that we can discuss on. But I think f0rest, his timing of his retirement lined up perfectly for him to be a part of this induction and to get his farewell on a big stage. As someone that, like, he was playing to, I would say until very fairly recently, still kind of trying to get onto a team, but nothing really worked out. And he called it quits without having that kind of a send-off from a big stage that like Get Right had when he was leaving NIP, and everyone's like, oh, he's going to retire, even though he didn't even retire then. But he had these big moments for himself. And Forrest is always just like, yeah, I'm just playing here, dude. It's chill. And ultimately, when he did call it quits, I think he really I think the community appreciated having this moment, being like, okay, this guy that played for 15 years and has inspired so many and has been one of the GOATs, if not the GOAT, depending on how you want to do your own phrasing of Counter-Strike. He's done with playing and he's entering a new era of his life. I think that altogether, like the community, the people in the audience that looked up to him, played with him, played against him, and himself just being like, okay, this is it. It was a very heartfelt moment, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, I think it was a really nice. Oh, sorry, you go, Connor.
No, it's cool that with the HLTV Hall of Fame now as well, you actually almost give a platform to players to make more retirement speeches too. It's something that I think like we still struggle with in Counter-Strike is the elegance and grace of knowing when to call it quits and how to announce that. For example, like how tragic would it have been if Simple never got to come back and his walk away from Counter-Strike was just not showing up for Melbourne? You know, like we're talking about the CS GOAT. We're one of the most impactful players of all time, and it's like you need to be classy with it. And I think that with like everything you just said is so applicable to this, Prof, is that like Forrest was the great platform to kind of springboard this new segment of the award show. Yeah,
he wasn't that keen on coming, I can tell you that. Like, you know, in person, I was in Sweden talking to him at Swedish LAN. They were doing some show match. I was like, you want to come? He's like, yeah, Get Right is coming, friberg is coming, maybe Existence with Flower, and we'll do a reunion. I was like, oh yeah, cool. And then you message him like 2 weeks later. It's like, oh, let's book your flights. He's like, you know, man, I'm not gonna come. He likes his family, being at home. He's that kind of a guy, chill dude. I was like, you know, let's just imagine we start the Hall of Fame and we give out Rolexes to winners. Would this entice you to come? And he's like, let me think about this. So I needed like a little nudge to be there, but I think he was happy in the end that he said yes.
Yeah, 100%. How hard was it? Like, considering this was like the first time you did the Hall of Fame, how hard was it to select the initial 4?
I mean, it is the process is. It's more about figuring out the process because I don't vote for them myself. What we did is we made selected a committee of people that have been around the scene for long enough to appreciate people that played 10 years ago and also 5 years ago and 4 years ago, and have kind of a range of people from different regions as well. So people from Asia, people from North America, South America, that can select, you know, who is worthy of being inducted in the Hall of Fame. And, you know, honestly, I would expected some biases, you know, people just voting for people from their own region, but I was actually pretty, you know, the people that got inducted in the first round were in everyone's top 3 ultimately. But the process is everyone puts in, I think it was 3 to 5, I would say kind of these are people I think that should be in. We take all of them, we, you know, rank them, and then we take the top 10, and then that is voted on. So it's like a 2-step process of first nominations and then voting from the committee. And the committee includes people like, you know, Chad and Moses and stuff like that. So.
And that's going to be continuing on for this year's awards as well, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, it was supposed to be 3 people this last year as well, and then moving forward 3 people, but considering these 4 were in the top 4 and all very close to each other and very far away from the people below, we were like, it doesn't really make sense to break this up. It's like Heaton and Potty and Get Right and Forrest, 2 Swedish iconic duos that deserve to be inducted at the same time. So we pushed for, you know, the 4th one and got that approved, and then went into moving forward. It will be 3. Who that's going to be, I have no idea. I don't want to also spoil who was the 5th in line after, but, you know, a lot of legendary players that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame for sure.
And you also mentioned the Hall of Fame is not just going to be, you know, this ethereal, metaphorical space. It's actually going to be a place that you can go and you can play, right?
This is correct. Yeah. So what we are doing is a Counter-Strike map for the Hall of Fame. Our long-term plan is to make it a physical space as well, but the first step would be to make something digital and something that everyone can access from their homes. And so together with 1xBet, who are the sponsors of the Hall of Fame, we came up with the idea of a Hall of Fame map. So essentially, as people get inducted, we'll expand this. Right now, it's the 4 players that we know. 4 rooms, each room having some history of the player, their achievements, photos, and then a challenge based on something that they're known for. Obviously, like the Aztec eco round from Heaton is there in a bit of a different way, like as a challenge, obviously, so you can replay it, get a high score, and then share it with friends or stuff like that. So, Forest has a movement map, Get Right has a spray map, and then there's a retake from Potty on Nuke, and there's also different versions of Nuke that you play through as you go through this map, through the challenge.
That is such a cool idea. I think that's so sick. When can we play it?
Yes, so officially it will, I don't know when it's going to be released fully, should be very soon, but it will be available to try out in Cologne at the HLTV Awards after party. So that's the first, for sure, the first time people will be able to play it. And then after that, it will be probably very shortly publicly available online.
And the launch party, details of that. I hear there's a particular DJ set that may or may not be happening. Maybe
even 2. Yeah. So a lot of things that we're planning right now. This is the big moment. I think this is the thing I'm most excited for out of everything that we're doing tonight. We are doing a party. It's just like the awards, kind of for industry people. Maybe someone that knows someone. Maybe you can get in. Who knows? But it is for players, for talent, for people working at the event and partners and generally everyone in Counter-Strike. But what we are doing is we're getting 2 guest DJs, and that one of them is Stunna, the other is Haka, and people are like, what the fuck is this about? There's many things to say, but I showed you guys. Haka has a YouTube channel where he is putting up his mixes. What did you think? Scrawny, as an expert on electronic music, what do you think about this?
I think that his presence is already clearly coming through in the few select videos that he's posted, and his multitasking in the videos such as hanging my laundry while I play Afro techno. That's really his Mona Lisa at the moment. So I listen, all respect to Stunna. I think he's going to prepare harder because that's what Stunna does. But I think Haka's aura is going to take it over the line at the end of the night. I don't know who's opening and who's closing, Prof. I don't know what your DJ lineup is, but you better release those set times because
I think the plan right now is for Haka to be first and then Stunna after.
Really?
Also, he might have some obligations, earlier in the night, so don't want to get some overlapping with his other stuff. But this is the plan, yeah.
This is my biggest revelation of the night, man. I had no idea.
So will you stick until 1 a.m. at the dance floor, Striker? I know this is not your home ground. This is not your map pick, as we would say in the jargon here. But will you see it out until the end?
Yeah, this makes it all worth it, man.
There you go.
You heard it here first. Confirmation at its finest. If you guys want to keep up to date on any of the action going down, make sure you follow HLTV Awards on Twitter and Instagram as well, because it was newly created for the awards last year. But loads of updates, loads of insight going down on those social channels. We're going to have a very, very quick break, but when we're back, we're going to be talking about the season so far and looking forward to the frontrunners of the awards 2025.
She said she loves you.
But she can't love me.
But I love you.
I won't play window anymore.
What's going on?
Play your role. 1xBet.
So let's talk about it. The season so far, obviously a hell of a lot of action going down from the beginning of 2025 until the Blast TV Austin Major. Speaking of which, before I think we talk a little bit about our opinions of players, I think we should check in with some to see the best and worst roster changes of the first half of the season.
Props to Vitality, because Robs is an insanely great player, and it's crazy that his contract just ran out.
Okay, Vitality plus Robs.
Robs to Vitality. I think Vitality with Robs, I think they look incredibly scary.
If you're asking me so far, I mean, I think I can say myself just because of the results.
Great move, great move.
We've got Jota.
I think, to be honest, Gamer Legends pickup, it was really good. It's upgrade as well.
I really like Head God joining G2. I think he was playing very well before in Cloud9, so big chance for him.
Yes, the best roster move is no move. So us, Spirit and Mongols.
And the worst, probably no, the Falcons Nico.
G2 minus Nico.
Can be Nico leaving the G2 and going to Falcons.
Let's see who with Heroic, because they lost everyone.
Shui? How to not say Shui?
Probably G2 minus Nico.
I think the biggest question mark right now is probably like Falcons maybe. I think Falcons in the end, they probably didn't have the lineup they wanted.
Okay, so general consensus, no surprises. Robs being the best transfer move of 2025 so far to Vitality Striker. I don't think that surprises anybody.
Yeah, I mean, reminder, this was from Katowice 7, so this is at the beginning of the year, before we saw what Vitality was capable of, really, so this was before they won their first tournament with Robs even. So yeah, we could see, like, obviously a lot of the community thought that what was possible, maybe nobody really quite expected just how much was possible,
I'm surprised that there was actually no shout out to like not more of a move towards Spinks to Maus. I thought, I mean, obviously, I guess if you're asking, I take that back.
This didn't
you're
happen
asking
at that point as well. Like we were
really?
asking on Katowice, right? And so this is when they had a stand-in still at that point in Kato. So
I don't know if it was announced already.
Yeah, I think it might have been announced at that point.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, but I think
guess
everyone...
also, it's like if you're asking for the best roster move, I mean, it's a no-brainer, really. So I guess that's why, you'd need a real Maus diehard fan to take that fight.
I think
that
honestly
one was marred by the fact that, like, it came with the IGL change, right? And that's why, everybody was like,
yes.
So what does this mean exactly? So I think nobody was quite prepared. And again, I mean, also we couldn't quite expect what was coming out of Maus as well.
Well, Ima said best change, no change. Didn't turn out to be that good for them. Like, Navi definitely seems like in hindsight they needed it. I know we're going to also talk about Spirit to some degree. Should they have made that, like, this season for Spirit will definitely be discussed for a long time, considering obviously they win the major, they win bounty at the start, and then after that they really aren't that close to winning these big tournaments. Obviously they won the PGL as well, but the big ones, the major stuff like that they are aiming for didn't really pan out, and the whole Kyosuke situation, maybe they should have done that before. How the future will play out will remain to be seen.
I'm kind of surprised the amount of people, I mean, obviously context at the point that it was asked, very important, but the amount of people that said Nico worst roster move to Falcons.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
I mean, it's a lot of it is just from the G2 perspective. I think them G2 losing Nico is a big hit, and obviously we saw what it made. Their results have been nothing to talk about. Literally, their whole season is a throwaway, and then losing m0NESY as well. But the roster that they're building now seems pretty okay, but it's a completely different, I think, set of expectations that they're going to be facing.
Any final thoughts on any of the best, the worst? Anybody want to make a bold statement here? Connor, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you.
I was gonna say bold statement. It's always easier to ask the question than it is to answer it, huh, Freya?
Or are we agreeing that Robs was the best move?
I don't think there's any question about that, is there? It's like, currently it's more of a contention for like the best move of all time, if anything, So it's like this year, yeah, of course.
I think that makes sense.
I'll say this. If Apex's interview from 20 what was the award 2023 award show, right? When he No, excuse me. It was the 2024 award show.
Yep.
When he's saying, and we're going to be able to use that award show now. And that interview is like a reference point, right? The HLTV Awards gave us that reference point where he said, like, I'm going to do everything, whatever it takes, and then, wow, what a season here at the first start of 25. This show, despite there being no players here, I mean, this is going to be a good reference point for the next season because we are sitting here so convinced that Rops was the best move, that like everything's going to continue forward, that Vitality aren't going to slow down. Here we are all sat like almost as if like the awards have been given out already. And I think that's just a real testament to the sheer dominance that Vitality brought to the first season. It's not just winning, but it's dominating a season as they did. I think this would be the funny part. I don't have a hot take. I don't have anything that we're going to be able to reference back to, Freya, but I think that is what we can reference 6 months from now is just how cocky all four of us were that Vitality were going to clean house.
That's, I mean, a hot take would be to predict anybody from Vitality to lose an award at this point, so.
Okay, imagine, this is probably a slightly easier question because you've had some time to prepare, Scrawny. Imagine you are in charge of the awards next year and you get to create your very own award. What would it be and who's the winner of said award?
Right. So for me, I have made the award called Connor's Commandant. This is a team that features a true commander of troops. And I selected Torzy as the first recipient of the inaugural Connor's Commandant Award. And I want to contrast two critical moments, I think, that truly showcase what it is to be a leader of men. Because you have in-game leaders, of which Torzy is not. But the in-game leaders are supposed to be the leaders of men. That's when Aleksib B steps forward, a year prior and kind of is that guy. We see it with Apex, true captains. And if we go back to Katowice, the departure of Shuhei on Maus, that was the shocker. And I've always kind of rode this like additional wave where I've said that the fact that they don't have a leader of men in that regard was going to hold them back. Torzy has become that. That's why I give him this award, because I remember specifically when Astralis did not make the major, whatever major it was, Shanghai, I think. And Blame F somehow dodged the fact that he didn't have to do an exit interview for that team, right? And he was a no-show, and they sent out Stare in his place. And that is the perfect example of what this award does not go to. That is the example of a leader going AWOL. And in Torzy's shoes instead, a soul-crushing defeat in Austin, where his emotions were so incredibly high, where you could see that there was a personal level of disappointment after drawing that back from a 0-2 start to the major. People could say that Maus don't have fans, but it's the amount of passion that I think Torzy showed throughout the run in Austin, despite having a difficult single event in terms of performance, where he was still playing with his heart on his sleeve every single fucking game, trying to draw them out from the depths of like a horrendous start where Falcons flopped and Maus didn't. And then to defeat on stage and then still walk out, tears in your eyes, knowing you're on the brink of like an emotional kind of breakdown in that way. And he still took the interview and he still spoke about his team and he still tried to set the bar higher for the next season. And I think that takes a real man to step up in those kinds of difficult moments. And so Torzy gets my award for that. And shout out Shocks one time as well, because that interview was one of the most elegant exit interviews that we've had in recent years for Counter-Strike.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it was also, I think nowhere was it signified more than I think it was in the elimination game against Vitality and the train where Torzy just goes completely missing, but he's constantly the one pushing the team and trying to get them to bring the energy up as they're losing, kind of badly in the first half. And like, despite him having such a bad time individually, he's the one like trying to push them on, so that's very cool. That's not something that you see very often. You obviously see players get down on each other and all these things, or like take it too hard when they're performing badly, especially in a game like this, but to see somebody step up to that pressure and be able to cheer their teammates on as they're themselves struggling, I think that's very inspiring, regardless of the result, really.
Yeah, I mean, he was doing it at the group stage as well, like same thing. And in the group stage, they made these comebacks multiple times. Sometimes he was playing amazingly well, sometimes he was playing horribly, but it didn't really matter. So I think I really like this this shout out. Also, the Blame F1, someone said in chat, but it was even worse. It was for Copenhagen, so they're home major, right? And yeah, so after that he was removed, and then Device was the IGL. So there's how that went.
If I could add, there's right before playoffs, the media day that we did before playoffs, I had a sit down with the half of the playoff teams, and the content piece was the one that played right before the grand finals went live, where you just kind of see these like black and white shots of the players that made grand finals. And the concept of the piece was that, I'm recording this with the players before the playoffs even begins. And I told them, I said, I want you to interview right now as if you are a grand finalist at this major, because anything that they said to me would not have been played unless they got to grand finals. And one of the players I sat down with was Torzi. And so, I thought it was really cool that we could put them in this place where it's like you get to speak in a more confident self. And the thing that really I took away from that interview with Torzi, and, that's really convinced me to give him like this shout out for this season of Counter-Strike, especially then to go see him go on to the semifinals and do what he did. But, he had the coolest line where he said, like, obviously the next major is my major, but I don't want to win that major championship. I want to defend my major championship at home instead. And like he said that pierced through me. Like I was so motivated, and I actually believed like they could go on to take this one, right? Like I thought that maybe all the roads would lead to them versus Vitality in the finals, and then the upset could happen, etc. Because man, I've never seen somebody kind of like you were saying, Prof, Striker. You don't always get to see that evolution in a player, and Torzi has really embraced that this last 6 months, I think. So he has me convinced, man, in all regards.
Yeah, it was really nice, like the amount of, as you guys referenced, like the little like mic'd up moments that we got from the majority of Maus throughout the Oscar Major, right? And then we had Torzi on the desk to kind of break a couple of them down, because it's like, even when you're in a situation where you're not performing your best, you're not hitting the shots you would usually hit, like how do you still stay so motivated? And I think something that like he always cites about Maus is like, it's that brotherhood, right? Like you've got to be believing in, it's not just about you, it's about your team as well. And like imagine if you're having, you're dropping the ball in certain aspects, but that doesn't mean that you can't come back from it. Like every round is that ability to reset. So yeah, I think this is that's a very nice one, Connor. I think you've done very well with that category. What about you, Striker? What would you add as a new award?
This is gonna be so Connor. So I don't know what's the word for this, but you said it was so nice from Scrawny to do such an award. I'm gonna go the exact opposite way. Mine is Striker's Strikeout, and it's about Falcons. And I know that the first thought that I will enter everybody's mind will be the Austin Major, but it's not where I'm taking this. It is IM Melbourne, actually, where they had that 12-6 lead on Nuke against Vitality, a Vitality that was about to win their Grand Slam, or ended up winning their Grand Slam, and that they could have stopped it effectively. We could have been halfway through the season, and the Vitality streak, as we know it now, would never have happened. It was so close to not happening. They would have had the pressure of the Intel Grand Slam on them heading into Dallas, which is, let's say 2 weeks heading into the major, and they would have been rolling with this pressure heading into the major itself, not having converted it on that first attempt, potentially then not having converted it on the second attempt. Who knows if Falcons do win that series? How does the next series between them go? Like it's a bit of it added to that whole Vitality, like the aura of Vitality, of the undefeatable Vitality. And of course the streak ended up going for something like twice the amount of series, so it was a very crucial moment of this season, I think, where the rest of it could have really turned out very differently.
I mean, it's something. It's one of those alternative universe things that we'll never know, but would be really cool to see how it could have panned out for sure. Because as you said, the whole 3-5 against MIBR is something everyone's gonna harp on, but and everyone's gonna say. I mean, not everyone, but it felt like Falcons seasons was a disaster, when in reality they won their first trophy. They went so they were so close to beating Vitality on multiple occasions, right? So you want to say that they were great, but you also want to say it was horrible because of how abysmal the major was at the end. So it was definitely a season of two completely different sides, and now obviously another change coming in. Who knows how that's going to affect them.
Prof, where would you go if you could create your own award? What do you put forward?
So mine would be the Prof's Paradox. something that absolutely doesn't make sense, but it works out anyway. And I spoke about this a bit in the past as well, but it's this whole Yakindar and Furia, but we can also expand it to Molodoi as well. This Furia's international experiment with a guy from Latvia and a guy from Kazakhstan, two Russian-speaking quotation mark guys that they picked up, and also their analyst who is Krizin now, used to play in like Avangar and all of these like Kazakhstani teams. Like when I was at the major, every time I ran into this guy, I was confused. I was like, wait, why is he here again? And there's like, yeah, he was with Furia. Obviously, this makes no sense at all, but they made this merger. As much as it doesn't make sense, it makes more sense than what they did in the past when they brought in Junior, for example, when there was like, oh, hey, here's like 4 Brazilians in the team, Brazilian coach, Brazilian management, and just one guy that's like completely doesn't fit here at all. They actually went the other direction. It was like, okay, we need an opper. We found this opper. Obviously, some back channeling from Yakindar's agent being like, hey, this guy can help you with this young kid, speak the same language. He can get him acclimatized to the big stages and everything. And they're like, oh, okay, maybe this could work. We need kind of that type of a player as well. Someone that can be like in active roles, help out. And this is the thing that I didn't expect at all, for Fallen to take such to go into like the worst roles on the team. I expected them still to be in active positions so he can call the shots, but he actually gave it up to Yakindar to some degree to set this guy up. And absolutely for no reason, and all the reasons that make sense, Yakindar blossomed back into a player that we knew before. I'm not going to say to that extreme where he was in Virtus Pro and early on into Liquid, but he is a really solid piece for this team that has not been in major playoffs for years, has not been close to winning a title in years. Maybe now they're going to Fisher. They're the favorite, highest ranked team. They could just lift a trophy there. Wouldn't surprise anyone. It's such a huge turnaround that both the team and Yakindar managed to make in a short span of time, in an environment that makes, on paper, very rarely works out. Like either you have an international team or you have a national team, and things that are like kind of a mix in between usually don't work out because there's a wedge between how half of the team thinks, how the other half thinks. So I think it's a great story for a player that kind of lost his identity and lost his form in Liquid, and it also shows like, how Kiyoshima was a problem. Maybe Liquid is the problem ultimately.
Yeah, I think it was surprising as well whenever I was talking to him at the major and like asking him about how, obviously Molodoi is doing English classes and he's trying to get up to speed there, but like just the amount that Yakindar has to translate for him in game still. Like I obviously don't have any experience being in the server, right? But I imagine those split-second decisions, once you have to translate that and then retranslate it back, like that's pretty nuts, right? That's like another whole thing for Yakindar to be adding on his shoulders.
No, it took
ZywOo. How long did it take ZywOo? Like remember when that first Vitality thing with the Danes and the French switching to English? Like we're talking about ZywOo, folks. And language as a barrier was this thing that was supposed to hold him back as long as it did hold him back as much as it for like a significant period of time running into Paris. So shout out Molodoi for just making it seem easy, I guess.
With a live translator on his team.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's insane. Striker, do you think that this is the team where Yakindar does reclaim his former glory? We do get to see, the VP Yakindar of old.
Man, you're like really putting me on the spot. Like I can tell that you're in the analyst desk where you're like trying to get hot takes out of people and all that stuff. This is right up your alley. I can tell. Maybe I wouldn't go that far. I think the team still probably is. Like where they are now, I think that's where they are pretty comfortable. Obviously, they will be in the position where they can fight for playoffs and all that stuff, but I don't really think that there's that much more that Furia can really achieve beyond what we've already seen. But I could be wrong, of course, but like we know that from what Furia are talking about and all that stuff, it seems like a transition to a different future, possibly without Fallen, so who knows what's around the corner. Maybe it's another player from the same region. We're going to see a CIS or former CIS majority Furia in the future.
That would be wild. Yeah, you guys have gone into some really nice, emotions, some hard-hitting analysis with your award. Mine is as simple as it fucking gets. It's Freya's Friendo. It is the award for the friendliest player. There's a hell of a lot of players that were, up for contention. It was a very hard decision to come to, but mezii is the man I settled on. Not least, obviously, first ever Brit to win a major. But Connor, when you're saying about those moments where you're outside of the game environment with players, right? You're doing the interviews. You're on a media day. You're even just walking down the hallway, and the players, give you a nod. We'll stop, ask you how you're doing, little catch up about your life. It was really nice as well in Dallas. Like, he obviously brought his fiance and his kid out to watch the game as well, which was obviously amazing when they managed to get the W there. But he's just such a solid guy. Had a really long conversation with him about I'm a transport nerd, right? I love planes, I love trains. And there is this particular type of train that is in his hometown that, funnily enough, I've been to just to go on this specific train. And it's one of my favorite conversations I've had ever with a player. So that's why he wins.
This is another big revelation of the night. Didn't know you were such a train nerd.
Yeah,
she's a total dork, man. She can tell you the seat layouts of any airplane that crosses the Atlantic.
It's content handy, I'm sure.
I feel like Freya could identify a train based on the sound of it approaching.
I think I could. That could be a next year's award, Transport Nerd of the Year. Either way, we do have a question, speaking of mezii, from our Skin Club partner, Mauisnake. So let's see what he had to ask us.
Hey guys, it's Mauisnake here, and I think for the very first time, we're going to get a British player, not only in the top 20 of HLTV's list, but he's knocking at that door of the top 10. So we'll see what happens. Do you think he's going to be making it or not? I'm talking about mezii, of course, but I want to give a shout out one time to Haka.
Another hard-hitting question for you, Striker. Is it possible that mezii is in the top 10 this year?
I'm left with all the downers, man. Like, I know I chose that one last time, but I will say that, like, as much as we obviously saw what mezii did, especially at the major, I think that's where he left it at a high, right? He ended the season with his first EVP of the year, and like, of course, if he continues down that path, if he gets more awards down the line, there's no limit, right? Like, he could keep climbing that. At this point, I think we still see mezii as, and statistically that is being supported as this rock who is very consistent in what he provides to the team, but doesn't necessarily have the impact of what you would see out of the top 10 players of the past. For example, they're always kind of big stars of the team typically, right? Of course, there are parallels to be drawn between Vitality and Astralis, and Astralis had 4 players in the top 10, I want to say, at one point in 2018. So it's not like it's impossible for a team to have it there. But then, they didn't have a ZywOo, who was just like dominating everybody with like 1.4 ratings every tournament, So like, there's a ceiling that's a little bit too high maybe for a lot of those players to make it to the top 10. So at this point, unless we see a little bit of a step up from mezii, I would say probably not. But yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself.
But top 20 is possible.
I think absolutely. Yeah. He's somewhere in that range, right? Like, we've seen him step up in playoffs. As much as he doesn't have a lot of those awards, as I said, like the major one was his first. He does step up at crucial points, and like, his overall stats are actually quite good, for a player in his positions, especially. Like, usually, they'll not be able to reach that high, So, and like, those 109s, 110s ish players generally make it to the top 20, especially when they have the awards, some of the awards to back it up with. And major EVP is nothing to scoff at.
Well, let's get into the juice of the show and check out some of the front runners for each of the individual categories. Of course, you guys watching at home, you can vote in the chat to decide who you think stood out the most so far in each of these categories. Let's begin with the panel awards. Striker, if you wouldn't mind, could you maybe just give a little recap of how the panel awards are decided, maybe compared to the HLTV Awards?
Yeah, so HLTV Awards would just be kind of our team, like the internal committee that we have between me, Peter, and Harry. Some of it is about the ranking, but that aside, panel award is chosen by a lot more people than that. It is, last year, I think it was 30 people. It should be the top 20 representatives, so top 20 teams of the year. We just pick a representative and they vote, and then plus 5 kind of industry members. I think we chose some talent last year and a bunch of these people, plus 5 HLTV representatives, so it is really a community. I shouldn't call it a community award because that's a different
expert
thing.
Expert
panel award where everybody it is really your peers that decide your fate effectively.
Let's should we start the conversation off with opener of the year, of course, taken home by Donk in 2024. I'm sure he's up for one of the top 5, definitely in this particular category. Is there anybody that stands out to you, maybe other than Donk, Prof, that could be in contention?
I mean, this is probably the worst category to talk about, if we're completely honest. Like Donk, the what he is doing and in the role, yes, maybe people can pick someone like Flames and say, like, because it is voted, it's not based on stats. Like, we use the stats to do the first election, and then it's on people to decide, put their 5, 3, and 1 point on who they want. Maybe someone could say, like, oh, Flames has more difficult roles, he's more sacrificial for the team, versus Donk, who gets like more setup and gets better roles overall. But other than that, I feel like when you look at Donk, Nico, Zantares, and Senzu, and even Zertian, I feel like all of them have very similar positions in what they play, and it's hard to put anyone above Donk this year. Last year, he is just in a category of his own right now.
Yeah, I like that we've got this Zertian honorable mention as well, because he's obviously not had he didn't have the best start to the year. But do you think there's a point striker where if Maus would be a little bit more, if he was to be a bit more consistent, rather, that he could break into this top 5?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, that's why we put him just outside of it, right? Because he was among the contention. You could talk about this. Zantares has had a little bit of a downturn in the last couple of months. Senzu kind of the opposite way, almost where he finally broke through that kind of playoffs barrier at the major, right, with the run to the second place with a pretty good performance. So that's that kind of those ones were always going to be somewhere on the edge, right? So I don't see why not. I mean, Maus have had obviously a good year already so far, and maybe it was more of a shared, as it is in Maus effectively. Really, it seems like every Maus iteration there's always some share of credits to be thrown around, but usually he was the front runner there, and so I don't see why he wouldn't be able to return to that.
Moving on to closer, that was obviously taken home by JL last year. The other finalists joining him at Bit and Yimfat. Currently, though, obviously we've all seen the news with JL recently. Anybody standing out for your money, Connor, in terms of closer of the year so far?
Well, I think the general trend is going to be, can anybody upset versus a vitality player in a lot of these awards, right? And obviously with Donk, it's the exception where we're going to have to see if Flamesy can do it over top of him, just because he is such a specialist. But no, for this one, I think that closer it's got to be Rops. Apex has talked about already how you can just so easily leave Rops to do his own thing. It's it's 20% of your brain when you're playing for 5 players, like Apex has to, that you can just kind of put on autopilot and know it's going to come out with impact. I think that in this one, specifically with closer, I always feel like the closer award should almost go to the guy that wins the most, because you've got to be able to close out those tournaments that come off of the rounds that they're adding to the board. So for me, it's Rops. If anybody's going to mess around with it, we'll see how Maus bring themselves into the second season. It is cool to think that Spinks can kind of swing at Rops as the guy who took his position. I think that's the fun talking point between the closer front runners is can Spinks take back his old slot on vitality at the very least in this one specific award category?
I mean, I think with Spinks is he individually has been playing well, and even in vitality, if you just looked at the raw stats, he was a pretty good player last year, but obviously it didn't really transfer into wins, and that's kind of what you're getting at, maybe directly or indirectly. Calling him out in some ways, he didn't always have the impact that was needed to win some of these close rounds, right? But for me, it's really interesting to see Wikidia and Tess's, especially here, and just having, Tess's at the start of the year, even, going to Bucharest, he was kind of on the chopping block for Kyosuke. He was always kind of felt like a player next to Dexter, who came into this Falcons lineup more as VRS points than an actual player on the server. He was more a necessity than anything else. But it's interesting that he did perform well enough to be on this list and well enough to stick on this roster to get the confidence of his peers on the team to be like, okay, we can carry this guy moving forward, not carry him literally, but like we can carry on with him moving forward. So I think that's a very interesting player to see on the front runners here for closer.
I think it speaks a lot to his versatility, right? Because, I mean, historically, if we look at how TeSeS was playing on Heroic, for example, you would never have called him closer. I mean, he was always one of the more aggressive pieces. It would have been the guy sacrificing for Stown a lot, and all these things. So he was never generally in those positions. But somehow in this Falcons team, he has transitioned into quite a bit of a different roster. Like, he still considers himself a space taker, but if you look at how he does it, it's not quite the same, and so that's why he kind of ended up in this position that doesn't necessarily, I don't want to say suit him, because obviously he's been able to have some good results with it and even a couple of awards to go alongside it, but it's more like it wouldn't be his first natural instincts to develop into, so it is just very cool that and as you say, for him to kind of pip Magisk, who seems like more of a natural fit for that kind of a role, especially if you have such aggressive pieces as Falcons do now, with 3 guys who can effectively be an opener at any point. That's where it is curious to see how Falcons chose him instead of Magisk. Obviously, the performances of Magisk probably played a factor in that decision, in the end, because original reports were that it was going to be TeSeS. But yeah, this all just speaks to how TeSeS has embraced a position on a team where you wouldn't really expect a guy like TeSeS. This is like supposed to be like the superstar team. You'd probably think more of a Magisk in that position. So it's very cool.
Let's move on to Anchor of the Year. Of course, that award was taken home by Bit for 2024. Let's see who is in contention, though. The front runners coming into this year so far. We've got, obviously, Bit is there on the left-hand side. Heavy God, Yimfat, PR, and mezii, my UK boy. Prof, where are you siding for this one?
This is an interesting one because you don't really have a player that stands out extremely. Like, all of them have their pluses and I would say negatives in terms of, if we're talking about the top 20 of the year, right? PR looked pretty good at different points, but didn't really play a lot of playoffs, made it in Melbourne. Other than that, they haven't been really in deep runs, right? Look at mezii, he's really good, but he's like towards the bottom of Vitality, right? He's not one of the big stars. Bit really up and down this year, really lacking consistency that I would to some degree relate to him. Heavy God, a newcomer, I think he impressed maybe the most out of this crowd in terms of where his team was and what he put up on the server. I think he stood out the most for his team out of this gang. And then Jimpat, who I feel like really, since Spinks came in, whether it's related or not, had a downturn in this season. Hasn't really been on the same level as last year when he was, also connected to Falcons as a player that they wanted to pick up as one of the specialists in this anchor role, one of the best, if not, the best at certain points of last year in the role. So it's quite an interesting category, I would say.
Yeah, for me, I mean, Heavy God obviously stands out in that I think he has been able to shine on this G2 roster, but the results haven't really been there, similar to, I guess, PR, no real playoffs performances and all that stuff, So as much as statistically he would probably be somewhere towards the top, the opposition that he plays against maybe isn't quite up to par with a mezii, obviously, for example, who's played all the best opposition basically this entire season because he has made it to all the finals, played, that's just naturally going to produce the hardest opposition possible. And even with that, mezii isn't that far off of a Heavy God, So it is, as Prof says, quite a close-knit group statistically, and probably, I would imagine by the end of the year, it's going to be the hardest maybe to pinpoint.
It's kind of, I feel about this award the same way I almost feel about Mauisnake's question, brought to you by Skin Club, where it's the, can mezii break into top 10? I think the answer is yes. We look at this award, it's like, will mezii win this award? The answer is yes. What would really excel him into that with certainty, though, might actually just be the underperformance of the other players around him. right? Like the second season of Counter-Strike, with obviously people trying to make changes to take a swing at Vitality. Like we don't know how Bit's going to continue to perform or not perform with a new piece in Na'Vi, especially a less experienced piece in Na'Vi. We don't know if Gamer Legion is going to be able to get back to the same highs of themselves. Like to me, this is like a Jimpat versus mezii, or maybe even, funnily enough, like Rops steals this award from his teammate, you know, depending on the play of it all. But
yeah, that's a bit of a like conundrum, you know, that we have at the moment. You know, like we've obviously had this kind of the two, like anchor and closer, kind of go together. Like it is usually a lot of the time it will be the same player. It is just on the opposite sides, of course, you know. But generally, you think of players as like an anchor plus lurker. So it's kind of just it's just how it works out. And generally, we would like to move away from having to, like, a player be eligible for both awards, you know, because anchor is meant more of for the supportive pieces of the team, right? Not for like specialist anchors like us Rops would be, you know, who is more of a star, who will be more aggressive in those positions and all that stuff, you know. So hopefully we can get to a point where we can define it in a way where these things won't happen so much.
It's just really a great example of how great of a guy mezii is, like Freya highlighted, that even within his own category of awards, he's letting it feel close. You know, that way we have something when we get back to Belgrade at the start of next year that we can, you know, there's a little discussion around it if things keep going the way they are.
Just doing it for the storylines, my boy. He knows. Is there a discussion to be had when we're talking about in-game leader at the moment? Because I think it kind of goes back to your point earlier, Connor, where you're saying, obviously right now we're signing everything over to Vitality and saying you might as well just take the awards now, right? What do any of these other four have to do to even be in contention with coming close to Apex right now?
I think, again, to get close to Apex would be to go on a run that we haven't seen in years, which just doesn't seem like it's possible. For me, I like the conversation
we saw it this
between...
year.
Sure, but I mean, you know, okay,
you can't top that. It's already
right.
Done,
there's no.
Right?
I'll go. Okay, there's the hot. I mean, it's not hot at all, but there will be no better season in the second half of 2025 than what Vitality put on already. Not by any other leaders. That's the only one. That's like, can Donk get better? Was the question coming into 25. But I think Blitz deserves a shout out as like the challenger in this category, specifically because, you know, listen, Apex has done something amazing, right? He's just amazing, hands down. But he's done it with proven and talented pieces, whereas Blitz is leading a team from Mongolia, of, you know, one of the youngest rosters in the top. To do it from a region that we've never seen these sorts of peaks from before, I think that deserves like the extra sort of credit. So if you go for the one-to-one head-to-head comparison between seasons, it's going to be incredibly tough to topple Apex without going on another, you know, once and a half decade run. But if we're going to do anything, then we got to say that Blitz is doing it from the shadows, you know, out of nowhere. To elevate Asia as a region in Counter-Strike's history now in 2025 is something that is an accolade that deserves to be celebrated. But how can you already compare to the first 6 months of the year? That's going to be the tough spot. But I do think Blitz deserves to get flowers. If Mongols win an event, or rather when Mongols win an event, because we'll see if they can dodge the top teams, right? If they end up popping up somewhere where Vitality aren't, etc., that's going to be a glorious moment for Blitz, and he deserves extra credit because he's doing it with borderline children.
As far as what somebody else would have to do, you know, to match Apex, maybe just look at his hands. That's what you need to do.
Yeah, 7.
Just get 7 tournament wins, including major and Intel Grand Slam in the second season, like, you know, all in one season. I guess that's what's going to take it away.
I mean, one thing that you said about like comparing Mongols and Vitality and like Apex and Blitz is a part of Vitality's success has been GMing, like getting the right player in ROPS. Like that's been a huge thing. And on the other side, Mongols don't have that privilege. Like you can't even go out and they could get anyone probably in Mongolia, but there's no ROPS or waiting around, you know, being kicked out of a phase that they can pick up to improve. So all of the improvement needs to come from within. They are the longest standing roster by far, almost 2 years, I think now, that they have the same core, when most teams don't last more than 6 months. Rarely does a team go over 6 months. Only the best of the best do go up to a year, essentially, you know, those that are winning all the time. So I think in some ways they're reaching that. But yeah, just to mention, the fact that Brolan is on this chart, on this graphic, is crazy in itself. No one no one at the start of the year would put $5 on that. Let's just say that.
I also want to
say,
sorry if I can, if we're shouting out the management of Vitality for the roster moves, let's also shout out Flamesy and Rops for no buyout on either player.
That's still
cheaper
crazy.
than butter.
That's still crazy to me. Like that's what having ZywOo does to a team. Basically, it's just like like I'll just join at a free transfer. Why not?
Hilariously, that's how you afford ZywOo as well, is by just not paying buyouts for your other stars.
Well, speaking of ZywOo, how much? I kind of want to frame this question differently. How much did the performance or lack thereof of Falcons at the major, how much has that maybe affected mezzii's chances when we move into AWPA and the front runners at the moment?
Well, you're going to have to ask those 30 panelists, Freya, because I have no idea. I mean, obviously,
you are one of them.
That's true. That is true. Obviously, they're going to be nominated. Nothing's going to affect that. I don't think at this point, unless we see some like crazy drop off we've never seen before out of a player like Mauisnake. So, I mean, it's like this whole Vitality discussion. It's kind of difficult to take anything away from them at this point. Obviously, if somebody was to do it in some way, it would be kind of on the basis of what I was talking about for last year, where I think some people might have given it to Mauisnake just on the basis of him being more of an AWPer than ZywOo is in terms of focus, or how much he has the big green in his hands and all that stuff, So maybe some panelists will look at it that way. I will tell you, I will not. Like at this point, I would 100% pick ZywOo over Mauisnake without blinking. So we'll see about how the other 29 of them, or however many we will have this time, we'll go about it.
I think also it's interesting to see who would even end up as the third right now. I think Shiro had a pretty good year. I know certain analysts don't rate him that highly. 9-10, honestly, his improvements have been pretty steady. I think at the major he showed some great highs for Mongols, and that's what they need if they want to keep making progression. I think he needs to keep improving, because I wasn't that crazy impressed by him last year. I think it was obvious that was actually his rookie year on playing on the top level, right? And then Torsi, we spoke about, but I think what he brings in terms of like being a vocal part of the team is great. I think his individual level is not near the mezii, ZywOo, Shiro right now. For example, I think he has a lot more to give. And I think he was actually doing that better maybe last year than this year. So it's not something that he can't reach. I think he reached it in the past, but he needs to find that within himself to be consistently there.
Yeah, as much as, I mean, we've always had Torji as like this playoffs performer, right? The major obviously hurt him, but like he's actually not looking that hot at the moment in terms of that, in terms of how he's playing up in the big matches in the playoffs. So it's definitely up to him to step up, to enter that, to take it for himself, to enter that discussion where he can be a top 3 AWPer of the year.
For the sake of conversation with these awards, if like we're just going to put the Vitality players as the placeholder number ones, I think that the conversation for like where Silver might land is interesting with AWPers specifically, because I would put it on 9-10. I think the playoffs game that we had versus obviously Vitality in the finals, like that first map of Mirage, that was nearly a major winning performance. You look at map 3 and he is a total shell of himself. And I think the reality of the situation, the pressure of the environment, all of that kind of crept in and it really ate Mongols from the inside out. And he fell off. But it's like, if you were to invest, right, if these were stocks and you were to invest in any of the players on your screen right now, your portfolio is already stacked with ZywOo. You buy 9-10 stocks now. And I think that this second half of the year, if the Mongols can continue these deep playoff runs as they've been doing so frequently, so consistently, top 8's the minimum, 9-10's the guy that could really elevate it. And if you look at the most highest rated players of the year as well, like it's still Senzu for Mongols, but 9-10 is on the runway, and he's gaining momentum, and there's a chance that he kind of takes off, where it's like, we talk about Torsi. Well, he's got to be able to tap back into a peak that he has surpassed, and being able to get back to a peak is always one of the most difficult things. Mauisnake's got a roster that's moving around him as well. I'm not putting him in that conversation at the moment, because it's just like the Falcons to me is this constantly ongoing project. This is like stable roster in Mongols, real promise most recently, and a peak that now feels like it could be bigger than anything we've ever seen. So I'm putting my my silver chips on 9-10 here.
And I love planes, so that metaphor, that sold me on him, Connor. That sold me on him. Final of the panel awards is coach, which I'm kind of interested, Striker, in terms of like how the voting goes for this from your perspective. It's like, it's a bit less tangible of, like tangible numbers that we can look at a coach for, right? Like sometimes there are coaches that are responsible for a lot more of the kind of emotional management of the team. Sometimes there's coaches a bit more like Blade, who are much more with the hard-hitting analysis side. Talk to me a little bit about like how you go about voting for a coach in this category.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot about listening to his teammates and what they say about him, right? And or often what they don't say about him is also important, right? Like if you see a lot of players that will never really commend their coaches or never really say anything about their coaches, and that also says something, right, about how much of an impact does that person have on the team that not even their player will give them their flowers, and so that's always a big thing. Obviously, this will always be kind of a like I don't want to undervalue it, but kind of a PR award in the sense that we can only go by what people say about them, right? And what people from within say about them. We can talk to them, and we can also kind of gauge what their impact on the team is from their interviews or from talking to them behind the scenes and all that stuff as well. But they're obviously going to be incentivized to talk well of themselves or like what their impact is on the team, all these things, So it's probably the trickiest one to pin down, because usually it will just go to the guy that has the most wins under his belt, right? And so that's how it's gone historically, and I don't see it going any other way unless somebody has this amazing track record somehow in how people talk about him now.
I think the analogy for this one is, do you give the award to the person who is good at keeping plates spinning, or the guy who gets the plates spinning? And in that case, I always go for the guy who gets things off the ground. Like, I think that's what a coach really is in its essence. Zonic is somebody who I've heard, like, this is with Dupree, maybe it's a backroom talk, so I'll be light, but he still truly believes Zonic's one of the best coaches of all time when it comes to keeping the system going, right? But maybe getting it up and running is his struggle. So I'm not going to give it to Zonic in that regard, because to me, the coach is somebody who comes from the outside and elevates. And it's like, it's either Cyclone for getting Brolin to work as the in-game leader of Maus, right? And still being like the father figure of that team, which is very young as well. But I think in that regard, anything he's sort of done, Mara has done, again, from Mongolia. With younger pieces, with less of an arsenal. Mara didn't bring in Spinks. Cyclone had that tool, and that has elevated Maus, right? So for me, I want it to go to Mara. For somebody who's as decorated as he is in terms of like length of career. Also look at, we want to talk about how players do or don't talk about their coaches. Every single Mongols player almost had a staff member in their Austin stickers as well, which I think is a real argument for like them trying to solidify Mara's place in Counter-Strike, and whether that's with our awards at HLTV or whether doing it through their own type of shout out in the way they did. It's really a testament to, I think, the importance of Mara with the Mongols.
Yeah, I mean, historically also, that was something that I was also looking at with Cyclone specifically, actually, is a really good example, right? Because 2 years ago, I mean, none of us really knew too much about Cyclone and who he was, but then he made this Maus project happen. Like, it was him who brought up all the academy players, then made it switch to the main roster. And then, we were like, oh, it's nepotism. He's just bringing his old teammates into the main roster, and somehow they all made it work. All these guys are now top players, and so that's where I was like, okay, I'll put him in the top 2 or top 3, I think, at that point, where I don't think he ended up making it to the top 3. I think just barely. So that was one that I was a bit sad about.
Yeah, I think Mara wasn't even nominated last year. A few people were, or he didn't get the top 3, I think, or something like that. So
he definitely didn't get the top 3. Yeah,
upset about that. Yeah, but I mean, obviously, some people are talking about Ash. Maybe the best coach of all time. Maybe the best coach, the coach with the best PR of all time, and not just the player in this team. But everyone loves him. Great guy, great to talk to. But the way we make these selections is usually just based on the ranking of the team at the end of the year, right? We take the top 10 and then give it to the panel to vote on that. So if your team is not in the top 10 across the whole year, you're probably not the best coach of that year. I think that's, maybe it would be the 3rd best coach of that year, but that's not really the point of the award. And it's not the ideal way to do it, but it's the best that we have right now.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a super tricky category to kind of whittle down the top contenders. Before we dive into the HLTV Awards portion, should we do some questions from fans?
We have a few questions. There's maybe some in the chat. If people can throw something, maybe we can answer them. I had 2 written down. One we spoke about chances that every Vitality player makes the top 20. Striker, you kind of insinuated that it is possible. That being said, Apex never wins an EVP because he's eco-farming, apparently. Is it the difference, like the comparisons between Astralis, the Prime Astralis that had 5 people in the top 20, and Vitality now, aside from ZywOo being like so far ahead, like compared to Device, who never won number 1, I feel like also we look at stats in more detail. There's like a lot more eco information and different types of information that we have now that kind of discredits to some degree some of these players. I feel like that's something that might hold Apex or mezii down depending on how the second half of the season goes.
I mean, generally his output is just not very high. I mean, if you look at, I think last year the lowest rated player was, I want to say Ima with 109, and I think that was around the lowest that we've had overall. Like the 109s, 108s, 107s are usually like the lowest that we go. I think Rain might have been 106 when he was major MVP in 2022 or so. And like Apex right now is 103, for example, you know, so he's just barely average, let's say, in numbers. And generally those players will not make it into the top 20. And a lot of the same things that I said about mezii, him being more of a supportive element, and that being shown in the impact on the victories and all that stuff in statistics that we look at quite heavily, and it is an important part. And in that, he's just always going to be lacking. He's never in the big impact player, right? And in Astralis, it was much more shared, as I was saying before. You know, as Vitality just have a much higher ceiling, but also a lower floor in terms of like the distribution of impact inside the team, right? In Astralis, you could have any of them technically be an MVP. You know, we had a Zipex grab an MVP from Katowice, one of those in 2018, I want to say.
Yeah, 2018, 2017, one of those, yeah.
Yeah, and so that you will probably not see the Apex doing that, you know, especially not when he has a ZywOo on this team. I know it's a little bit harder for him to do, but that's just generally not the expectation. And even for mezii, it would have been pretty tough to do, you know. So it's just like grabbing those awards for them is not as easy as it was for the Astralis guys, where it was really a lot more shared.
Yeah, there's another question. This was a curious one. Took us a bit to understand what the idea was, but I think it's a cool one. It said, "Who is the Leonardo DiCaprio of HLTV Awards?" That being said, Leonardo DiCaprio before Revenant, implying his first Oscar that he won. So a player, in this case, obviously an actor that was respected, had a lot of great roles, great success, but didn't get that big award to go along with the career that he had. Scrawny.
Yes.
Do you have one for this?
Yes, I'm gonna make it about me, Prof, if I can.
There you go. Okay, you can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since the inclusion of the community voted awards, there have been 3 of the same nominated talent of the year. It's myself, James Banks, and Sponge. James Banks and Sponge have both gone on to win the award, and I've still yet to pull it out of the hat. So I think, not to sound like an egomaniac, but I am Leonardo DiCaprio.
Literally him. You are literally him. Yeah, I don't have a lot add to that. I feel like that's a banger right there. There's some players that are missing their flowers, I would say. Some of them that, I mean, you can talk about players that never won majors, that didn't really have that shine. You know, someone like Guardian that was second a lot of times. You can talk about Device. People that had their peaks also before we started doing this. That, you know, obviously Device would have won Opera of the Year probably multiple times in his career if that was a thing back then. But other than that, maybe people.
Well, he had simple to contend against, you know, some of those years. So maybe the few before that.
Yeah.
So he is actually quite a good example for this, right? Like obviously he had the most MVPs for a long time. Not that long ago that he got broken, right? A couple of years. But he never would have gotten the number 1 or didn't get the number 1, even though some people, you know, were making the argument that maybe he is the best player in the world because he's the best player in the best team and all that stuff.
One time.
So, yeah, right. Greatest player of all time.
Yeah. I mean, there's also a question: why can Neo be inducted into the Hall of Fame as a player because he's a coach? That is something that we are discussing, and we'll look into before we start this year's induction ceremony. Like, if we should keep the coaches, active coaches, aside from that. That's how we approached it the first year, and the logic there was simply, I think, if you are actively a part of the team, it doesn't really feel like you moved away from competing, even though the Hall of Fame is for your player career mainly. There is also part of the legacy that comes from the coaching thing, and then having a separate coach Hall of Fame, I don't think really makes sense, because right now there's very few people that you could even name to put into that. So we just put it as a general Counter-Strike Hall of Fame, and just wanted to keep it separated from active and not active players. But yeah, obviously Neo is a guy that would be high on that list if he was eligible last year for sure. So something to think about and discuss with the committee, and also for the community to talk about and for us to hear opinions.
Also, if I may, Prof, I think since I'm not working for HLTV, I'll say as well, I think excluding Neo for now is fine, because like you're saying, he's actively competing. I think one of the coolest things about the HLTV Hall of Fame element is that you're bringing somebody back in for it's almost like a send-off in a way. It's a moment you get when you are done competing. It's what brought Forrest back to a Counter-Strike event, to see his friends again, to do that. And Neo, we're still traveling the world with Neo. We see him all the time. So,
yeah, I mean,
he's in it, I think give it some time. And I'm also one of those people who doesn't believe that the Hall of Fame has to necessarily be this chronological experience. I don't think it matters who's first. Well, maybe very first, but after that, the order does it truly matter? Or do we just wait until we get a chance to bring Neo back to celebrate him for a Hall of Fame inductee moment? I would say just let's not rush it,
Yeah, it can also come out very awkward. If your coaching career is on a downturn, and in that moment you're inducted into the Hall of Fame, it really feels weird. Obviously Neo last year, it ended up with them being second at the major, which is pretty okay result, but their whole year wasn't that great. But imagine if it was now, for example, that we're inducting him into the Hall of Fame after their whole season was pretty disastrous overall. I don't think it doesn't really feel like, a big celebration moment for someone that's working on something and kind of struggling, right? But it's something to discuss.
Any more questions, or do you want to move on to HLTV Awards?
Yeah, let's move on. Let's keep.
Okay, this one's really interesting. Obviously, rookie is the first category we're going to be talking about. There's a lot of names that are definitely going to be included in the front runners, but there's obviously an interesting asterisk to this when you think about Kyosuke, and he obviously hasn't competed yet. How much of an impact would he have to, or what would he have to deliver in that second half of the season, Striker, considering he missed out on the first 6 months to kind of be up in that discussion?
I mean, we saw that with Malbs, right? If it wasn't for what Donk was doing, I think it would have been probably pretty easily going in his favor, right? So Malbs ended up being number 7, I want to say, on the top 20, even though he pretty much entered the top level team midway through the year, right? He had a little bit from mezii in the first half of the year that helped him in that run up to the top 10 and the top 20. So he had a little bit more of a head or lead time, I want to say. So it would have been more difficult for Kyosuke than that. But then the hype around Kyosuke is maybe much bigger than it was around Malbs when he was joining G2. Everybody's expecting this guy to be the next Donk. So if he's doing anything close to Donk, then of course he could just snatch this away. I mean, the candidates or the top 5 front runners that we would have right now, again, you would have probably some of your favorites. I think mine probably would be Tanir at this point, also because of kind of the expectation, right? He came into this heroic team as basically a replacement for Nilo when he went inactive, basically, and then he just goes on to ace it, right? Nobody really thought that was possible for Tanir. So that would probably be my pick in this particular moment. But I think, Molodoy's also done a lot, in this Furia time. I guess it's more of an up and down situation where he's had some moments with Virtus Pro, but then also the same downturns, right? So Jota, again, a guy who's helped bring Aurora to their best that they've ever been, right? So all these, even PR, another like all of these guys seem on a very similar level to me when I look at what they brought to their team in their first year at tier 1. So I think this is also going to be very hotly contested, bar a Kyosuke, blow up in the second half of the season.
Anybody else want to make a claim as to the first couple months of this year, or the first 6 months of this year? Who kind of stands out for you, Connor? Yeah.
At the moment, I'm going to give it to Mauisnake because I think if you look at like the environments of which they're all competing in, like yes, Jota, I'm going to give him the credit he deserves. He unlocked Aurora to get to this level. It's going to be weird with Aurora because Antares is standing out for the moment. So it's like, again, this is one of those ones where the second half of the year, suddenly I think he tumbles down those rankings. But Mauisnake, somebody who I remember when I heard Mauisnake for the first time ever, I was in a nightclub in Romania with Prof. In fact, he pulled me and Launders aside and he said, guys, have you seen the news? I said, no, what? He said, Furia roster changes, new Opper. We're like, okay, like we're waiting for him to go on. And then Prof made us play a game of guess the player GeoGuessr, where we had to choose countries from around the world. So obviously we're going like, oh, what, it's Portugal. It's got somebody from the Iberian Peninsula. Like, what? He took us 10 minutes in the club to get to the word Mauisnake. He said it out loud. I said, don't you mean Molotov? He said, no, Mauisnake. This guy came from just nowhere, right? Like that is the essential breakout rookie of the year kind of environment. And he's doing it in a secondary language. Think about when Furia went over and tried to make Junior work, right? Like Mauisnake was up against that, the previous attempt. And he's just blown me out of the water, taking to his home stage as well for Astana and rocking it on stage as well. Like no jitters, no hiccups. That to me is like he's got the most flair of the players on this list. And I know that you could argue Tanir, has done the same in some other ways. But then I argue by pushing in the context of Mauisnake's inclusion with Furia, you didn't think they were going to become a top 8 major playoff team again. And if they ever did, you didn't think they'd do it with Mauisnake as a rookie, Yakinder returning and falling on a rifle.
Yeah, and this is also a guy who like comes out and after the top 4 in Astana says like, if it is a success to be top 4 for some, it is not for me. And you're like, okay, you're one of those guys, I guess. Like, that's fair enough.
Like, wait, who are you again? The first time seeing this guy. Half the people watching don't know this face, don't know the name, don't have any expectations from him. But yeah, I think it's a great category because it's wide open. And I mean, Zwei, also a guy coming now into Spirit, had some decent results with Namiga in the first half. I think he's more the Malbs type of player, and also the roles like he plays, he could be up there. Obviously for Kyosuke, everyone wants to say he's the next donk, but he didn't play from the start of the year, so he definitely won't be in the same category as donk because he will have quite less time and maps played and everything, but quite a wide open year in terms of the rookie. There's no clear selection. It will be up to what happens in the second part of the year.
I made a mistake earlier, by the way. Mops was number 12, so just to set the record straight.
There we go.
Next category, not so wide open. Let's be honest. It would take something insane from any of the other teams competing to topple Vitality from Team of the Year out of 2025. We've obviously already talked about it. If another team could go on and lift 8 trophies in a row, go on and have a 31, 32 match win streak at that, it looks unlikely. But should we maybe play a game of how we would rank the teams after Vitality?
That is much more interesting, because that's a hotly contested position, right? Even for number 2, obviously, Maus probably have it in terms of achievements, in terms of number of deep runs, but maybe Falcons with the amount of competitive series against Vitality, right? Maybe they should pip them after this major. I think it's pretty clear who that should be, but still, like I think even the number 3, 4, with Spirit somewhere there, like it's also kind of it's very hazy, I would say, and with this Mongols run to number 2 as well at the major. I mean, it's all shaken up the order quite a bit, I would say.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this before we went live, because we were going through this and you're like, wait, is that Spirit map win percentage accurate? And it's like 74%. Like, it's a huge gap between them and then all the other teams. And obviously this also depends on how your runs go, who you face, which tournaments you go to. But they also have two trophies from the season. So I think we're we're kind of sleeping on Spirit because there's the expectations of last how it ended with the major win. They have donk, the frustrations that we saw visibly from donk and some of the other players of like them not feeling as competitive in some of these big series against like a Vitality and such, that they just didn't feel that close to winning trophies. But I think it puts them in now with the roster change, it puts them in a position where they could without a doubt be the second best team. And if the thing is, like, Vitality really needs to drop off for anyone else to pick up where they left off, right? I think that's kind of the case also for the donk ZywOo thing, is like, if Vitality for some reason would start to struggle, yes, then they could be overtaken. But even if they drop off just a bit and they're still like semi-finalists consistently, like how is it possible that someone would take over? I'm not sure.
Yeah, pretty difficult. And I mean, also with Maus, like what you were talking about, the map win rates and all that stuff, they did play Vitality like 10 times this year, you know, so it's going to be a little bit, it's going to be hard to keep your map win rate up if you're playing one of the best teams of all time, potentially, you know, all the time. Like if it wasn't for Vitality, this Maus roster would have had 3-4 tournament wins this season. So it's hard not to, at least the second place for now, to take it away from Maus, really.
Just to be sassy, I think you said, Prof, like we're kind of sleeping on Spirit. I'll say like they may have their 2 trophies over top of Maus and Falcons only having 1, but those 2 trophies were a Blast bounty at the very start of the season, which I don't rate as much. And secondly, a PGL Astana where nobody else in terms of the other teams we're talking about right now were in attendance. Yeah. So to me, you know, it's the Maus and Falcons wins that actually matter more. Maus even more so, because Cluj was, if I think back at the season, I think, you know, Cluj was one of those. Astana was actually pretty good, but there was just less competition. The event itself was excellent.
Was it? Did it have? I feel like it had more.
Astana was slightly better, I think.
Astana had Navi at least, for example, and they had Spirit. You know, that's one of the things. Like you can't face yourself, obviously.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
But yeah, I don't think they had Maus, and then Maus was in Cluj with Falcons, so Falcons didn't come to Astana. So in hindsight, I feel like it's very similar. At the time, maybe the Cluj was a bit higher, but all in all, not a huge difference. Yeah.
But yeah, again, I think if any of these teams can beat Legacy in a best of 1, then we can have a conversation about taking down Vitality, because that's an accolade Vitality don't have.
It's one of the metrics for Team of the Year for sure. Your head to head against Legacy. Fluxo, one of the best teams in the world, apparently.
Striker, it's almost time to get into your favorite category, which is, of course, Player of 2025. But before we do that, Prof, you had a chance to catch up with some fans, see what they thought in Austin. So should we check out what they had to say?
Let's do that.
Who is top 1 this year?
Brookie.
Serious answer?
Donk.
ZywOo. Cop-out answer?
ZywOo.
There's no way there's any debate. It's ZywOo.
It's looking like it's going to be ZywOo. It's not even close right now.
Oh, are we serious? It can't be ZywOo, right? Otherwise, Donk does some crazy, breaks every record again.
Best player in the world this year?
Simple.
Easy.
Come on. ZywOo. Yeah, ZywOo.
You know what? I think Mauisnake's going to come back next season and go absolutely crazy.
Number 1 player of this year?
NBK.
There we go.
Shout out NBK one time, I guess. But most people siding with ZywOo. I think that makes sense, Connor. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I would too. Again, a bit of a layup. Some notable mentions, of which NBK is not the least.
I mean, in reality, let's just be real. Like NBK has more chances of stealing Scrawny's award than ZywOo's. That's just. He had one pretty decent desk appearance. I wouldn't mind seeing him more.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, what award? But yeah, okay, I get you.
I mean, none of your awards. You don't have one, of course.
Oh.
But, you know.
Speaking of which, Prof, why do you have one of the awards behind you on your couch? Because I don't remember you winning anything either.
Actually, this is the only one I have. This is the real one. It says Best Event Organizer from my friend Luke. Legendary after the first award ceremony that we did in Sweden, which I barely survived. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I actually am a clone of myself. The other one is just it's just a model. Let's just say it's a model. It's a test. It's a test one.
Very nice. Moving back to the conversation at hand, though, ZywOo versus donk. does mezii have a chance? Anybody want to take the floor?
I mean, I think at this point, even taking it away from ZywOo would be difficult. But obviously, if somebody was to do it, it would be donk, who is like statistically very, very close to ZywOo. In some ways, even better, especially in terms of impact on wins and some of these things. There's obviously ZywOo has better teammates that helps in that aspect and all that stuff. Like there's I don't want to set this up as there's a chance. There's I'm doing the layup for ZywOo to get snubbed again or whatever. I know how people take it once they hear me talk about this stuff, But I do think that donk is being slightly overlooked in that race just through him not attending enough and all that stuff. At some point, as long as you attend all the big stuff, I think that's the biggest part, right? Like his sample size is not going to be lacking in comparison and all that stuff. So it's more about, can he grab a bunch of those MVPs that ZywOo now has, the whatever 5 over him for this first half of the year, and then maybe we can start having a conversation. So let's just say there's a lot of work to be done for donk, but I think if there's a season to do it, it will be now when they have the upgrade and they can maybe challenge for more titles in the second half of the season and challenge Vitality themselves, right? Because that's also going to come into play.
I mean, yeah, that's the classic thing. Is like, oh, your team needs to win for you to be able to do stuff. But obviously, if your team is winning, you're probably having good games. It's the things that are pretty connected. It isn't, in my opinion, it is as you say, also more closer than it looks just based on ZywOo has 7 MVPs. But if you look at what we had last year, the number of EVP plus, so like EVPs and MVPs. So I just used the same framework we had last year and updated for this year. For donk and ZywOo, that's 7. Obviously, for donk, it's 2 MVPs and 5 EVPs. And for ZywOo, it's just 7 MVPs because he just wins them every time Vitality wins, and they won almost everything. So the thing with that is maybe he also has an EVP. Maybe I actually missed one from Blast Bounty. But overall, when you look at that, both of them have been elite players. Raw numbers from donk, as you said, higher, just like fragging is higher than from ZywOo. So there is definitely a chance that if Spirit turns it around and they start winning in these head-to-heads, right, then it's more likely that the donk can take the title. Yeah. But yeah, Scrawny, from your not purist, but from your eye test and in casting games, how do you feel about these two?
I think right now, dude, I've just got it for ZywOo. I feel like there was something special about ZywOo taking 3rd place specifically last year, and that just for him, which is insane, felt like an all-time new low. Mm-hmm. Top 3 was a new low, and I think he's taking it personally, man. And that's
what they say. I don't know if I believe them still. I've heard the Apex say something like that, like that was stuff.
He said it himself.
Took it.
Yeah. He said it himself.
He's upset about that one. So I think that we're seeing like the return to it. I think like it taps into as well the level of like this, just like this attitude ZywOo holds. I'm very curious. Okay, I'll put it this way. I don't have anything to say about this competition at the moment, but it's just more about how things will go down at the HLTV Awards. If it comes down to a 1 versus 2 between ZywOo and donk, like ZywOo knew he was kind of out of the running at the most recent award show, but I want to see what sort of swagger ZywOo walks across that stage with if he takes back the number 1 spot. Yeah. Because we the year previously I thought had a great showing with ZywOo. He's got that photo of him like striking a pose with his trophy. Like both him and donk are the 2 players I think that have held themselves and presented themselves the best as like the Counter-Strike champion in each of the years that they've been celebrated as the best player. Yeah. So for me, I want to go back and I want to see him do that again. I want to see ZywOo just have attitude, maybe show up in a turtleneck, much like donk did, and just kind of walk away and steal the show. Like ZywOo could steal the show because right now nobody else I think is taking it from him.
Yeah, I mean that there's always a conversation of like, yeah, that guy has all the MVPs, so he should win. I mean, that was the same conversation with Device, but he wasn't the best player of 2018 when Simple was, So like, it's always, obviously this is a way different conversation. I don't want to say that this is the same type of deal, just on a principle basis, just because you have all the MVPs doesn't necessarily make you the best player. Simple was doing it in losses, like he was constantly grabbing MVPs off of Astralis, and off of the teams that he was losing to in finals, and that's why he was the best player of that year, right? Not the same situation here, just about the principle of it, that the awards aren't everything,
I know it's not like the main feature of the conversation here, but just like shout out to Robs for being in that contention of like the front runners. Like obviously we're not saying that he's going to be number 1 or number 2, but like imagine coming into a team and he's won like 6 out of the 7 tournaments they've won. He's won an EVP at that, but you're just never going to get the MVP when you have somebody like ZywOo on your team. So yeah, I think what's the highest he's placed? It was like 3rd back in 2023. I'm interested if he can match that this year. That would be just kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean that would break up the status. Well, I don't know if you can call it a status quo if it's been 1 year that we've had this big 3, but obviously we're kind of expecting that to be the big 3 again this year, especially now with mozii having a more competitive roster compared to the G2 that he had before, right? So that's the interesting part. I mean, at this point, I would be surprised if it went in any other way after this point, just because of that. And mozii obviously, having, I would say, bigger prospects at getting those MVPs and all that stuff. So yeah.
Just a quick question. There's Flames there also as an honorable mention. How close is he to that top 5? That's a bit of a surprise to actually see him that high again. But he did finish 7th, right, last year?
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's definitely been, I would say, I don't know how to describe it exactly. I mean, there's obviously going to be a gap between him and Rob. So maybe it's not as big as it seems on the statistical side of it. But yeah, he doesn't have, I think, nearly the amount of EVPs as Rob has. For
what
example,
are the things that push him so high, essentially?
As in, like, why is he top 5?
Yeah.
There's nobody else that's that much better of a candidate. If you look at the names that are after that, like Shiro, I guess would be a big one. That's probably the next one that you would have like in honorable mentions, right? But then everybody else is on a very similar level. You have like let's say Xantarases, Sphinxes, some of these guys who are just going to be like somewhere around that range as well. And they're all kind of similar, and so it's there's definitely a gap like between the top 4
and I
and
guess
the 5.
The first time that we wouldn't see Nico up here in a while in that kind of a category, right? Which is also interesting to observe.
Yep, for sure.
Well, with all that being said and done, Prof, one more time, how do people get their spot, their seat at this the biggest HLTV Awards we've ever had?
Yes, as we spoke at the beginning, 1,000 people, expanding it not just for the people for the size of the stage, but the stage will be much bigger. The venue itself, seating will be much bigger, but also for the foyer, as we call it, the red carpet, the all the stuff that happens before, after, in between some of the segments will be much bigger, with a lot more activities for people attending in the new venue in Sala Center, which is redone a year or so ago. So very fresh venue for next year. And yeah, people can go to HLTV.org/awards, find all the info about the show there, and do a quick sign up, or just reach out directly with an email or a DM on Twitter. So always open.
I'm so excited. Did we have a winner? Did Twitch Chat determine the winner of our own personal awards? Because there was a prize.
This is true. We did agree that the person that gave the best answers overall, according to Twitch Chat, would do an AMA on HLTV forums. Wait, my dude is not here. Let me check my Discord. Here we go. I got something. Okay. Scrawny, you're the lucky winner.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
There's my award.
Yeah.
You have the biggest hot takes. I will tell you that. I'll give you that.
Hey man, gotta spice it up. So thank you Twitch Chat for liking my answers. It was nice to talk about Counter-Strike for a day. I've been in the weeds, in the woods. Thanks for having me back, guys.
And follow HLTV Awards to see the exclusive time, date, location of the AMA in the forums. Congratulations, Connor.
Wait, Prof, are we gonna do this in the forums, or should we do it in video form? I know True Love was talking about that.
Ooh, okay. We'll see how you're trying to twist.
I'll
this
have my
to
people
find your
reach out to your
battlefield.
people, right?
You're more of
we'll
a
have,
visual audio guy, but we'll see. We'll discuss this.
I can't write. Actually, this is a problem with this. I don't know how to
Here
write.
we go. This is the secret that people don't know about Scrawny. He's actually not that smart.
a lot of revelations.
I don't know if that's a secret, dog.
Well, either way, that will be happening at some point in the near future. Yeah, thank you so much to our sponsors, 1xBet, our supporting partner, Skin Club as well. We will be seeing you for the HLTV Awards 2025 on the 10th of January 2026 in Belgrade. See you there.
She said she loves you, but she can't love me.
But I love you.
I won't play window anymore.
What's going on?
Play your role. 1xBet.